Okay, we are joined here today on the conversation by Ana Maria Archila, who is the co-executive director of the Center for Popular Democracy. And we're going to be talking about the fight to fill the seat of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so I want to start with, so today's Monday, last night, Sunday night, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Chuck Schumer
Yes.
held a joint press conference at James Madison High School, which is where RBG graduated, Chuck Schumer graduated, Bernie Sanders graduated from there. I think Norm Coleman actually graduated from there. It's quite a melting pot of Brooklyn kind of activity. So the two of them met outside this high school to talk about the response to both McConnell and Trump attempting to fill this seat rapidly. I mean, what did you make of this highly unusual pairing just appearing together in public?
Well, I think my Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez played it really well. She got to the microphone with Chuck Schumer and basically had a message for Chuck Schumer, which is we expect you to use every tool, every procedural tool, everything at your disposal to slow down Trump and McConnell's train. And I think that is a really important message. Of course, Trump and McConnell are trying to force feed people a new judge, knowing very well that the legitimacy of the court flows directly from people's ability to elect who nominates, the president who nominates, and the Senate who confirms a judge, a Supreme Court judge. And we are less than 50 days away from election, and it would be the most illegitimate move by McConnell and Trump. Obviously, McConnell believes that
Hmm.
because in 2016 he blocked the nomination of Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court, Obama's nomination, on the argument that it was an election year. So AOC, I think, did a really important thing, which is to remind people that this isn't that the power doesn't only rest in McConnell's hands and Trump's hands. It rests also in the Democratic leadership, Chuck Schumer, as ability to use his. Obviously people have speculated a lot about Schumer and AOC and whether they're going to eventually compete against each
Right.
other. Obviously, Chuck Schumer has displayed some nervousness about that, and that is appropriate. He should know that people expect him to use his power to protect our democracy, to protect people, and that AOC is someone that we look up to help us in that effort.
I noticed Schumer sort of nodding along while she was talking about using every procedural tool at their disposal. And he himself said, all options need to be on the table. But what did you read from him and his body language? And what do you know from your conversations with people who've been in touch with the Schumer office about how aggressive, he plans to be or how aggressive he thinks he can be?
Well, I think that um, what I think that many people are entering this fight about the nomination and the confirmation of a new Supreme Court justice, feeling that the cards are supremely stacked up against us, that it's going to be very difficult to win. And when I hear Chuck Schumer saying all options are on the table, what I hear him saying is pointing to the ideas that have been circulating about expanding the court and changing the rules of the game to restore some level of balance. So almost kind of assuming we might lose this
Hmm.
fight, but we will then fight to expand the court. But what AOC was saying to him was, you cannot enter this fight
Right.
assuming we will lose this fight. You have to use every tool at your disposal to not lose this fight, to fill the vacancy left by the icon and trailblazer that was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And so they're kind of saying they're saying different things,
Right.
but trying to agree with each other in a moment in front of the press. But obviously, um, Chuck Schumer, I imagine, would have rather not been put on the
Right.
spot that way.
Yeah.
But you know what AOC was conveying is what we need him to know. We
Right.
expect him to block in every way. We know from the fight to save the ACA, in 2017, we know from the fight to try to stop the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh that that disruption is essential. That without disruption, the voices of the people, the impact that decisions that happen in Washington have on people's lives kind of disappear from the conversation. So we will work with AOC and with Chuck Schumer to make sure that this process is slowed down so that the impact on people is allowed to be on people and our democracy is kind of at the center of the conversation.
So where were you on Friday night when you learned about the passing of RBG, and what was your initial reaction?
I was at home sitting next to my two children having dinner with a group of friends. And we were actually invited to dinner as the first night of Rosh Hashanah. And obviously it's a moment of reflection about the previous year and kind of imagination of the year that comes. And it was in that moment that we heard about the passing of RBG. And my first reaction was just profound fear. I think that in this moment, people are holding a lot of fear about what the future holds, because I think we understand if Trump is able to force a new judge on, to successfully confirm a new Supreme Court justice, our rights are going to be severely under attack. And the viability of our democracy is going to be severely compromised even more. So I think my first reaction was fear. My second reaction was sadness. Like, these women, Judge Ginsburg represented the tenacity of women. Her life story was one of kind of winning against all odds. She represented a level of integrity and kind of moral clarity that was very moving. And it was very, the figure of her, a very small person with an incredibly powerful character and a legacy that has shaped so many of our lives, and someone who actually dedicated her efforts to expanding the who is included in the promise of freedom and democracy that's at the center of this narrative of who we are. So I was both sitting with sadness, gratitude for her efforts, and a lot of concern about the future. It wasn't until the next day when I began to talk to people and remind myself that we have been in moments of great fear before, and that what allows us to move through the fear is actually a determination to take action together. That it is when we walk past the fear and we allow ourselves to be powerful, then we begin to make new things possible, and we make those fights that seem impossible to win suddenly possible to win.
On Friday night around 9:30, as it was reported, that there was a big call convened by a lot of progressive groups. I don't know. Did you end up? Did you make it to that one on Friday night?
I did not. I was. Oh, the big call. Sorry, I couldn't say
Yeah,
that again.
the big call on Friday night.
Yeah, so I was a spectator on the call. Our organization, the Center for Popular Democracy, was one of the conveners, but I personally, and no one from my organization was able to get on the actual program. Yes.
And so that, as I understand it, you kind of organized I heard that Friday night call didn't really result in anything useful. Kind of broke up
Yes.
fairly contentiously. no strategy came out of it. And I heard you had actually kind of convened a second one, do-over of sorts over the weekend. How did that one go, and what kind of strategy emerged from it?
Well, so the call on Friday night, which was organized very quickly, and got over 1,200 organizers from across the country quickly jumped on the phone. Even though the call itself didn't end up being a good space for strategy. What the call on Friday night essentially told people, okay, we are going to fight, and the first step that we're gonna take is we're gonna hold a vigil in front of the Supreme Court. We're gonna create a space for people to come, be in community, mourn together, and get ready for the fight. Then on Saturday, we, along with NARAL and other organizations, convened a second conversation that was actually a space for strategy. And so close to 40 organizations came together, and we spoke about our commitment to, one, fight to make sure that there is no confirmation before inauguration. So protect the legitimacy of the court by preventing Trump and McConnell from doing what they're trying to do, which is to force a confirmation down people's throats, even though they have demonstrated so much passivity and inability and unwillingness to do anything about the suffering that is so widespread in our country right now. The Republican senators have sat on their hands since May and have done nothing about the fact that we have massive unemployment. People are on food lines. There is like the most profound economic and healthcare crisis. So stop them. We agreed on that. We agreed that we need to fight this fight with people at the center, that our country this is a pivotal moment. The COVID crisis has kind of demonstrated how our society is structured, and that the people who are marginalized always take the brunt of the death, the illness, the economic suffering. That's what COVID revealed yet again. The movement for Black Lives has revealed yet again the extent to which systemic racism runs through every aspect of our lives, and police violence is one expression of that racism. So we will not fight this fight as if we were in a vacuum. We will fight the fight for the Supreme Court to save our Supreme Court by connecting the dots and putting the fight for racial justice, for gender justice, and for people's dignity at the center of the fight for the Supreme Court. And we will make sure that there's an expression of this in our elections. So we will use this moment to remind people of what's at stake in the election. So that's kind of the contours of what came out of the conversation on Saturday. And we will continue to organize, and create spaces for people to participate in the electoral expression of this moment, and the legislative pressure, both on Republicans and on Democrats, and connecting the movement threads to kind of really together protect our democracy and protect our people.
So, Supreme Court fights are interesting in that way because because it is the Supreme Court, it touches everything in everybody's life, and so you often have these situations in previous Supreme Court battles where kind of every group wants to make their issue the issue that the court fight is fought over. Unions want it to be about labor reform. Abortion rights groups want it to be about abortion rights, and on and on. Whereas this time you have the Biden campaign seems like it is really zeroed in on making this about health care. There's a case coming to the Supreme Court just a few weeks after the election that could invalidate the ACA, toss off tens of millions of people from their health care, and eliminate protections for people who have pre-existing conditions. There's a ton to be critical of when it comes to the Affordable Care Act, but as you know, and as you demonstrated through 2017 in trying to protect it, there's still millions of people who are getting health care through that project, through that program. What do you think of the Biden campaign's approach kind of to lead with healthcare, and to say that, if they stick another justice on here, the rulings that had protected the Affordable Care Act 5-4 in the past are now going to be 5-4 against, because you have this dystopian scenario where Brett Kavanaugh is actually the swing justice.
Yes. So on November 10th, the Supreme Court is scheduled to hear a case on the ACA. And healthcare, of course, has been one of the most important issues in our political discourse and in people's lives. During the primary, the Democratic primary, we saw how healthcare was the centerpiece of the debate. Because we have a very, very broken healthcare system in our country that leaves people without access to doctors, without being able to get the help that they need when catastrophe hit, and a private system that is like prioritizes profit over the ability of people to kind of live healthy lives. And now we have the most unprecedented healthcare crisis with the novel coronavirus. And we have seen how our broken healthcare system has contributed to the to the vast number of deaths, 200,000 deaths. We hit that marker over the weekend, 200,000 deaths. So it is appropriate to remind people that what is at stake is very close to every single one of our lives. There isn't a single person in this country who either has either themselves have a story of not being able to access healthcare or not being able to afford healthcare, or know someone who has lost their lives or has lost their livelihoods because of the healthcare system that we have. So it's an appropriate reminder. It is also important because when Trump got elected, the first thing that he said he was going to do was destroy the ACA. The Republicans had the votes in the Senate. They tried 5 times to pass legislation to end the ACA, and 5 times they failed because people on wheelchairs showed up and disrupted the hearings, because people who were dying showed up and told their stories, because people across the country interrupted their town hall meetings with their healthcare stories. So it is a powerful, we have in our in our body's memory and in our recent memory, the experience of fighting to protect our healthcare and winning. But healthcare is not the only issue that is at stake in the Supreme Court. We know that immigration and what happens with DACA will be soon at stake. We know that there are 17 cases going up to the Supreme Court to restrict and limit women's right to control what we do with our bodies and whether or not we keep pregnancies, and that is essential. We know that the Supreme Court it will be ruling on voting rights. So there's a lot more, and we want to make sure that as we invite people to live to kind of honor the legacy of Judge Ginsburg by protecting the court, that they bring the story that is their own, the priority that is their own to this fight. So I both want to say, yes, healthcare is important, and we're fighting this fight in the context of the most powerful movement for civil rights that we have seen in generations, which is the movement for Black lives, and that will be at the center of this conversation as well.
Not only was your organization central to the healthcare fight that you've talked about, and you personally, but you also were to the Kavanaugh fight. You even had your kind of 15 minutes of celebrity, where for people who don't remember, you and Maria Gallagher kind of very famously confronted Jeff Flake in an elevator as he was on his way to vote to move Kavanaugh through committee, and this emotional confrontation that the three of you had ended up changing his mind. Now, ultimately, as we know, he was confirmed in the end. So what lessons have you drawn from your involvement in the Kavanaugh fight, and what have groups learned from that they're going to apply this time around?
I think the main lesson that we learn from that fight is that our lived experiences are shaped by the decisions of the Supreme Court. And people will join a fight if they see themselves being talked about, if this fight feels very much about who they are and what they have lived through. And that our stories are so inconvenient for the political parties fighting for power. The Republicans would rather keep the debate, keep the conversation about the Supreme Court on something, on the argument that they say, well, the people elected us, we have the votes, it is our responsibility. They would rather ignore the consequences, the stakes that are there for people and their lives. And the way that we disrupt that way of doing politics as usual is by forcefully inserting our stories, forcefully demanding that they hear us, being completely disobedient, and not just engaging in the civil discourse that like disempowers people and leaves us kind of at the margins of the debate. So I want to really invite people to remember that the senators who were talking about the nomination, discussing and voting ultimately on the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh, were made to feel really uncomfortable, not by people who are like experts at talking to politicians, but by regular people, women who showed up to their offices and told them in their faces their stories of sexual assault, and people who showed up and told them their stories of losing their health care. And that they would rather not have. But you know what? That's exactly what they need right now. So in every corner of this country, the power that we have, we don't need to wait for the movement to show up. We are the movement. We are the people that are going to have to show up to the offices of every senator and tell them, if you vote, if you allow Trump to force a confirmation of a Supreme Court justice, these are the consequences in my life. I stand to lose my healthcare. I stand to lose my ability to exercise my right to decide what to do with my body. And we have to insert ourselves in this debate. That was the biggest lesson. And if we don't, then the forces of the political kind of maneuverings in Washington will decide for us who sits in the court, and these will have profound and probably terrible consequences for all of us.
So I know you've got to go soon. You've got a pretty big fight in front of you, but before you do, for regular people who are watching this, what would you say to them about what their role is in particular in this fight?
Okay, so their role is to disrupt the process. What Trump and McConnell want is to, in the next 3 weeks, to run really fast a process that will have no opportunity for the public to engage. But this is perhaps the most important thing that any senator and obviously any president can do, is to shape the Supreme Court. This is the people's court. So we need to force ourselves into this debate. Trump has said that he will nominate someone either this Friday or Saturday. And that will trigger a week-long kind of process where that nominee will go and meet with senators. We have to call every senator. We have to call our senators every single day and tell them, if they are Democrats, that we expect them to use every maneuver to slow down this nomination. If they are Republicans, we need to tell them that that by accepting this process, they will delegitimize the court and they will essentially steal people's ability to have a court that represents them. So for the Democrats, they need to slow down. For the Republicans, this is illegitimate, and we are using your words against you. Lindsey Graham said in 2016, I think that the president should not confirm a Supreme Court justice. This was several months before the 2016 election. He said, use my words against me. If this happens, well, we're using your words against you. We are less than a month away, or about a month away from election. I want people to go to Organize, Vote, Win, the website Organize, Vote, Win, and sign up to receive invitations to daily phone calls. We're going to be creating phone calls where people can connect with other people in their states to organize actions, to organize meetings with their senators, to organize letter writing campaigns. We need to do everything we can. And you don't have to be an expert on this. Maria Gallagher, who was in that elevator with me in that confrontation with Senator Flake, had never talked to a senator before. She was showing up that day for the first time to the protest against Kavanaugh's nomination. And it was her words that moved so many people. She told, through her tears, she told Senator Flake, look at me and tell me that what happened to me doesn't matter. Look at me. So what we have to do right now is get every senator to look us in the eye and to tell us that what happened to us doesn't matter. They can't, because they know that what happens to us is important. But if we allow them to nominate, to confirm someone without hearing from us, we will essentially give them permission to steal our democracy away from us.
Thanks you so much for joining us, Ana Maria Archila, the co-executive director of the Center for Popular Democracy. Good luck in this fight, and come back again soon, and we'll be following this all the way through. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.